Hey everyone, Laura Madrigano here. I am a board certified life coach and integrative nutrition health coach, and I help people heal their SVT naturally. So today I just wanted to talk to you about a question that I get asked a lot, which is, am I on medication? Have I ever had ablation? And when was my last SVT? So those are all fantastic questions. So the first answer is no, I have never, ever been on medication. When I was diagnosed with SVT around 26 years old, I declined when they offered me the medication. It just wasn't something that I felt I wanted to do at that time. When I had my first SVT at 26, at that point, I didn't know, obviously if it was a one-time thing or if it was going to become, something that I would have over and over. I took my chances and I didn't go on medication the first time. And then, any time that I had an SVT after that, I just always seemed to decline it. Even though I was prescribed it a couple of times, I never actually took it. So that's that. Obviously, the second question about the ablation, the answer is no, I never had ablation either. So 100% I've been managing, preventing, and healing my SVT naturally on my own since the very beginning. And I will walk you through that decision and why I made that decision for myself. Obviously, I am not a doctor. I'm an integrative nutrition health coach. You have to make these decisions, between you and if your doctor. If you are on medication, those are personal decisions. But for me, I came from a background where I just very strongly believed that all illness, all imbalance, all health challenges are rooted in dietary issues, emotional issues, could even be spiritual and energetic, which those are the core 4 healing layers that I talk about in all of my e-guides. And that is exactly what I applied to my own healing. So let me just tell you a little bit about my SVT history and about just how sick I was, because I think sometimes people don't realize that, that I was really sick and that I'm really better from doing all these natural things that I've done. So just to give you a little bit of insight, all through my 20s, I was working very hard. I was a designer in New York City. I was working through the night. I was pushing myself all the time. I was living on iced coffee and chocolate chip cookies. I just didn't, have a great diet. I did not have a healthy breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I didn't have a lot of protein. I definitely had a lot of carbs and sugar in my diet. And my first SVT was when I was 26. I was bending over to pack an order. And when I stood up, my heart went into an SVT. And I'll make this, sort of the short version, but cut to when I was, I had several SVTs through the years at that point, based on what I call SVT triggers. They always seem to happen when I was tired, pushed myself, stressed, ate really poorly, or anything like that. So it wasn't until I had my first child when I was 35 that my SVT was at its absolute worst. I was obviously exhausted from, early motherhood. I wasn't sleeping. I was breastfeeding. I was having electrical misfires every single time I breastfed. I wasn't, like I said, sleeping. I was never catching up. I never felt rested. My exhaustion levels were just through the roof. I didn't even have the energy to go out. I wanted to lay on the couch all day. And quite frankly, being a mom and the demands of being a mom felt very taxing and very exhausting. And I wished I had a nanny and a night nurse, and I didn't. So it was very, very hard for me at that time. I was having misfires every single day, ectopic beats, palpitations, and or SVTs. So, sometimes they would turn into an SVT, sometimes they wouldn't. I was constantly constipated. I had migraines. I had digestive issues. And my new symptom was that I had what I later discovered was POTS, but that's called postural orthostatic intolerance. But I had no idea what was happening to me. I had what I called heat intolerance. I couldn't go outside. I couldn't be hot. I couldn't exert myself, or I would feel like I would have an SVT. I couldn't go from bending to standing to lift my son without feeling like I was going to have an SVT or having an SVT. And like I said, I later was diagnosed by an electrophysiologist with POTS. So I was pretty sick. I was pretty miserable and pretty sick. I was afraid to leave my house. I was afraid to drive by myself. I definitely wouldn't consider flying or traveling after I had spent my whole, young life traveling all over the world and, going to Europe at the drop of a hat for my fashion design business. So my life was drastically different, and I was really suffering. And I just want to say that not only was my diet, pretty bad, but I also had other factors, I think, that were contributing to making my health decline at the time, which was, like I said, for me, pregnancy and being a mom was very, very depleting. That is not the case for all mothers. Some moms are, up for the challenge and, did not become nutritionally depleted during the process, but that has a lot to do with undiagnosed food sensitivities, which I have had my whole life and I didn't know about it. So I was very nutritionally depleted, and depletion is a root cause. It sets you up for SVT. I talk about that in all of my e-guides, and there's nothing like pregnancy to really, tip you over the edge. So I was, like I said, I was having SVTs all the time, and it wasn't until I finally had a really bad SVT that I started to become afraid for my future, my life, my child. I became very afraid, and I decided I really needed to do something about it. And I just quite frankly applied everything that I had already always believed in. I believed that our health issues stem from environmental factors, dietary factors, emotional factors, stress, all of those things. So I finally became committed to changing those things, even though I was so exhausted that the last thing on earth I wanted to do was cook for myself. I figured out that that ways that I could do that. And one of the things that I did was I hired an integrative nutrition health coach, which was I totally couldn't afford, by the way, at the time. I think that was another factor. Side note, my finances were sort of a mess. I lost money in my business, and so my stress levels were high overall. But anyway, I hired this integrative nutrition health coach, and she helped me get gluten out of my life, which was one of the best things that I ever did, and one of the major game changers for me in terms of my healing. And I did many other things in addition to that. I stopped having white sugar. I started eating like really nutrient dense foods for breakfast, and it's my health slowly and also quickly really changed. I started having daily easy to pass bowel movements instead of being constipated sometimes and not going to the bathroom for sometimes up to 3 days. By the way, that always seemed to precipitate an SVT for me. Whenever I didn't have a bowel movement, I was for sure set up for an SVT. So long story short, all of the things that I decided to work on, my own self-healing, and it was a pretty long journey, but all of those things are what helped me to change my entire health, not just my SVT. My POTS went away, my blood sugar imbalances, my constant migraines, my exhaustion, my fatigue, my heat intolerance, waking up in the middle of the night all the time with palpitations. All of these things were impacted by the changes that I was making in my life. So I guess I started doing that, it's got to be about 7 or 8 years ago. So I have been SVT free for the last 7 or 8 years. I wish that I had it like marked so specific so that I could tell everybody. But I did have one episode on the night that I gave birth to my second child. And I really want to talk about that because I broke all of my SVT prevention rules that night, which is why I had an episode. So I just want to be clear about that. It's, when we heal our SVT naturally, obviously we're not healing and literally getting rid of that accessory pathway. What we're doing is we're just changing all the lifestyle factors that are setting that off. And the night that I gave birth to my second son, as you can imagine, I mean, obviously I was 9 months pregnant. I was having a C-section. I couldn't eat the way I wanted. I couldn't drink water the way I needed to. I couldn't take my supplements because I was having a scheduled C-section the next morning. And, I was nervous. I was, not really looking forward to getting my stomach sliced open for a second time. So I was nervous. I was not drinking right. I couldn't sleep. All of those things were major SVT triggers for me, and I had them all at once. And not to mention being so physically uncomfortable. And so that night I did have an SVT. It was literally when I was leaving my house to go to the hospital, and I did break it in the car. So I am able to break my SVTs with Valsalva maneuvers. And if I were to ever have an SVT, I would be using the modified Valsalva maneuver because that one is definitely known to be the most effective. So if you are not already using that, look on my blog. I have links to it, to how to perform it, or you can just look on YouTube, modified Valsalva maneuver. But anyway, I hope that answers everybody's question. So I have had one SVT in the last 8 years. And like I said, that one was very, very, very extenuating circumstances on a regular basis. It's just not something I deal with anymore, nor do I deal with the ridiculously debilitating fear and anxiety of SVT that comes along with an SVT diagnosis. So I don't suffer from the fear of SVT. I don't suffer from SVT. I don't suffer from SVT co-symptoms. All of it has been drastically cleaned up, and diet is one major way. So I hope that answers your question. I hope that it gives you some kind of inspiration, because I really believe that diet and lifestyle changes can help you drastically reduce your SVT, change your health, and hopefully be like me and never have another SVT again. So check out all of my resources, guys. I have an entire Heal SVT Naturally website where I have links to all of my e-guides and Facebook group and blog posts and articles that I write, and a lot of new things coming soon as well. So I hope you'll check it out.